I think of spaces as a tool for managing emotions that is hidden in plain sight. It's just waiting to be activated. And some people really, really get it, but a lot of people don't. It's an underappreciated, underutilized tool.
Have you ever had really big feelings about something at work and wondered if your reaction was professional or appropriate? Or have you ruminated about something later or wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it? Whether it was a frustration over a project gone wrong or just excitement over a new opportunity. It turns out our emotions don't clock out when we clock in at work. And my guest today says that's not bad. He argues that all emotions are valuable. They're a source of information, even in the workplace.
But all of our emotions, they serve an important function. So we don't want to feel bad about experiencing them. What we do want to get better at is not experiencing them out of proportion. That is the big problems I think human beings face.
Welcome to Work Better, the Steelcase podcast where we think about work and ways to make it better. I'm your host, Chris Congdon, and my guest today is author and researcher Ethan Kross. Ethan spent his career decoding why we feel what we feel and what we can do about that. He's the author of 2 books, Chatter, The Voices in Our Head and Why It Matters and How to Harness It, and Shift, Managing Your Emotions So They Don't Manage You. Ethan shares how it's possible to gain control over our emotions at work, and our physical environments can actually play a role in helping us to regulate our feelings. Here's more from my conversation with Ethan. I want to start with just the idea of emotions and experiencing both positive and negative emotions as part of our work experience. And I think anybody who's felt, excitement at work or who's had those nights where you're laying awake ruminating about something.
Chris, you've had those nights?
Oh, Ethan, let's turn off the recording and let me tell you. But I think everybody has those, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so let's just talk about that from the beginning, like how our emotions play out and how might they help us or hinder us from working better?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it allows me from the outset to tackle a couple of myths that are out there about emotions and the way they factor into our lives. So a lot of people think that negative emotions are bad for us. And I am not a proponent of that belief. I believe that all of our emotions, when they are experienced in the right proportions, serve a valuable function. So what do I mean by right proportions? I mean, not too intense and not lasting too long. You may think I'm nuts here, but just bear with me for a minute.
Okay.
I actually value the fact that I can experience anxiety or sadness or anger. Those emotional experiences, see, you're nodding. You do think I'm crazy. I knew it.
No, but I think most people would go I don't want to feel anxiety.
Yeah.
It makes me anxious.
And that's precisely why it's such a valuable state. When I think back to moments in my career, I remember there was this one presentation that I gave, and it just fell flat. Mm. Normally I go in there and there's energy and there's excitement and everyone is it's this almost, dare I say, even magical experience. You connect with an audience. Mm-hmm. And this one, it was just no energy. And when I go back to reflect on, what was different about that one compared to all of the other ones? I didn't have any butterflies in my stomach, any anxiety the few days before that normally motivate me to hunker down, look at my slides, tweak them a little bit, make new connections. Anxiety is a really useful emotional response that tells us, hey, pay attention. There's something in the future that potentially could be important. So a little bit of anxiety, it's helpful. Mm-hmm. So here's how I define an emotion. An emotion is a response to things that happen to us in the world or that we imagine that are meaningful. And we human beings, we have evolved these very quick responses to help us deal with those meaningful situations. Sometimes happiness is helpful. Sometimes it's a little bit of sadness. Sometimes it's anger. But all of our emotions, they serve an important function. So we don't want to feel bad about experiencing them. What we do want to get better at is not experiencing them out of proportion. That is the big problems I think human beings face.
Yeah. One of the things that you said in your book that just really stuck with me is the idea that emotions are information.
That's right.
I never thought about that before. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, so emotions provide us with information about what we're experiencing and what needs to happen. And it's just another valuable tidbit. So when I'm sad, sadness is an emotional experience we have when we've experienced some loss that we cannot replace.
Mm-hmm.
I get rejected, and I'm not getting reaccepted. Like the story of
Right.
high school for me, asking girls out on dates, right? No, thank you. It's not happening. Move on. You lose someone you love, right? They're not coming back. We haven't figured out how to bring it back. You get fired. You lose a deal. All of these experiences, something happens. It's meaningful. It's a loss. You can't replace it. What does sadness do? It motivates us to pull back, turn our attention inward, and to make new meaning out of the circumstances that we're now dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really powerful response. So an emotion is information, like sadness is telling me, okay, I need to rethink how I'm approaching this area of my life because it's not going to be the same.
Yeah. That's such an amazing skill set and yet so hard sometimes. And I want to talk about that, but I want to probe in kind of a related area here because I think for a lot of people, we learn early in our careers, our work experience, we get this message that talking about your emotions at work or experiencing emotions is like you're not supposed to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in business school, like hearing this idea that you have to make the most rational decisions and that emotions can steer you away from really leaning into the data or objective points of information. And so I'm really curious how you think emotions play a role at work. How do we think about that idea that emotions and work don't go together?
Yeah. I think it's a bad idea. Um,
Okay.
and I think it's a bad idea because I think you're encouraging, rather than working with the machine and how it's built, you're working against the machine.
Mm,
Human beings are an emotional species. It's part of how we function. There's this wonderful study that tried to quantify the amount of time you spend experiencing an emotion each day. 90% of the time that people were sampled, they were text messaged throughout the day and asked what they're feeling. 90% of the time they're experiencing something. So we are bathing in emotions. And as a leader, I am doing my darndest. I don't know if that's an actual word, but we're going to roll with it to cultivate emotions in a healthy, adaptive way among my team. What does that mean? Well, sometimes it's motivating and inspiring and revving them up because I know that's going to make them more energized to achieve their goal. Sometimes it's forming an empathic connection because I
mhm.
value them as a human being. I value them as a colleague. And I also know that establishing those empathic bonds creates tighter, more cohesive groups, which are also more likely to perform optimally.
Right.
So, emotions, you don't want to turn them off. You can't turn them off, right?
Right. Yeah. A couple minutes ago, you used the word think and thinking. And I feel like talking about cognition feels like, a safer, more comfortable than sometimes talking about our emotions can be because, we can intellectualize this whole idea about like, oh, of course, cognition is really important because we need people to solve problems and, you do that cognitively. Can you talk about something that you see in the book about cognition and emotions being interconnected?
Yeah, thinking and feeling are inherently intertwined. And I'm gonna show you it right now. And every one of you who is listening, I'll invite you to join along. Chris, I would like you to right now think about an experience that makes you a little anxious.
Oh, okay.
Can you think about that experience? Can you recall a moment or something in the future?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we've just used thinking cognition to activate emotion. right?
Okay.
Now I
I think
can,
my blood pressure just went up too.
yeah, but I'm going to make it, I'm going to lower it now through thinking.
Okay. All right.
So now I want you to think about the last really wonderful moment you experienced with your family or friends.
Oh, that's so easy.
Yeah, and I even see a little smile on your face. We
Okay.
just use thinking to generate a positive response. Thoughts predict feelings, feelings being the subjective experience of an emotion, what you're aware of. Sometimes when we get an immediate fright, that can activate thinking. So the two go hand in hand. You cannot pull them apart. We do not know how to create Spock like robotic individuals who just perform computations, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to do that. And I don't think we want to do that. If you're thinking about your organization, and I want to say one more thing about organizations and talking about work as well as home. But like if we think about our teams, like sometimes I want my teams to be a little bit edgy about, hey, if we don't do this well, there are stakes.
There's ramifications. Yeah.
I want you to recognize that
Yeah.
because guess what that does? It zooms your attention in. It focuses you to make sure that you're going to dot your I's and cross your T's. And when we're dealing with the highest levels of performance, we expect every I to be dotted, every T to be crossed. So a little emotion there, negative, can be good. The flip side is if we're in a brainstorming mode and it's all about like the next innovation,
Yeah. Like generating ideas.
yeah, I want you to be expansive, pie in the sky. I want you, Chris, to fantasize about what would transform your division, your team,
Mm-hmm.
if we did this over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
That's now a very different emotional frame that's guiding you in a different direction. So thinking, feeling, they go hand in hand. You want both.
Yeah. Super helpful. You've got a lot of really helpful ways of expressing kind of this toolkit that we have to manage our emotions. And I found it really interesting that you broke it down into what you called internal shifters and external shifters. And I'd like to explore both of those. So, can you just, for our listeners, tell them like what is an internal shifter? Like, what is that all about? And how could I leverage that?
Yeah. So like, our emotions are so unbelievably complex, right? There are things happening in your brain and your body and relationships, and they're abstract. We can't really see emotions. So one of the things I try to do in the book and in any work I do with organizations is to get to the essence, right? Really try to make this actionable. And so first, let me just emphasize how I define shifting, because it's really important. Shifting is the process of managing emotions. And there are three skills that comprise it. It's the ability to turn the volume on your emotion up or down, or decrease the intensity of a response.
Okay.
Shifting is also about shortening or lengthening how long you stay in an emotional state. So,
Mm,
I appreciate anxiety, but I don't really want to experience it for really long stretches of time or really intensely. So shifting allows me to rein it in. Sometimes shifting involves moving from one state, let's say anxiety, to another altogether, happiness. So shifting is the process of doing those three things. And then the question is, well, how on earth do you shift? And some of the skills for shifting, they're inside of us. I call those our internal shifters. You carry these shifters around with you wherever you go. You just need to know what they are and how they work. Then there are external shifters. These are tools you can use to manage your emotions that exist in our relationships. So, ways of interacting with other people that can shift us for better or worse. In our physical environments, our spaces. This is, I think, an incredibly underappreciated lever for pushing people's emotions around. And then in our culture, too, the organizations and institutions we belong to, they can shift our emotions. And so there's a lot of shifters to learn about.
yeah.
And research shows that there's no one size fits all solution. Different tools work for different people. So the real challenge is learn about what these shifters are and start trying them out.
I know that there are a lot of people who probably feel like emotions or the way I feel about things. Like, I can't help it. This is how I feel.
Yeah.
I don't have any control over my emotions. And I'm curious what you would say about this, because this idea of shifting that you've talked about, of dialing it up or dialing it down or reducing the duration, like that feels like I'm consciously controlling an emotional experience. But I don't know if everybody feels like is that even possible?
Yeah, well, your intuition is right about according to one study, almost 50% of people sampled did not think they could actually shift their emotions. And when I first came across that finding earlier in my career, it was a not to be dramatic. If my wife was here, she'd tell me I'm being dramatic, but I'm not. This was like a devastating moment for me. I've dedicated my life to researching this concept of shifting emotions, and now 50% of the population is telling me it's not possible. I thought long and hard about it, and I understand where they're coming from, and I have a way of reconciling it that I'm going to share with you. But before I do, I want to emphasize that recognizing that you can control your emotions is an essential first step
Mm-hmm.
to getting better at managing emotions.
Mm.
Because if you don't think you can manage your emotions, why would you devote any effort to doing so? If I don't think there is anything I can possibly do to become physically healthier, why am I going to sign up for the expensive gym membership and then go every day and do these somewhat painful activities, right? I'm not going to do it. But I do think it's possible. And I have signed up and I do those exercises. There are parts of our emotional life that we cannot control. Chris, I don't know you very well, but I feel pretty confident in saying that I'm going to guess sometime over the past 2 weeks, you have experienced a thought. It's just kind of popped up in your head and it has elicited an emotional reaction. And you're probably ashamed of that thought. You wouldn't want someone else to know about the thought that popped into your head. Fair to say that you've experienced something like that, a thought that maybe wouldn't want someone else to know?
I think that's fairly safe to say, sure.
So we don't have control over those emotionally laden thoughts that often just take hold of us. I think that's why a lot of people think, no, you can't control emotions. But the moment those thoughts are activated, we can begin to do all sorts of things to manage how we engage with those thoughts and how they impact us. So you did not push that person in front of the truck, right? That was an act of control.
Mm-hmm.
I can experience a super far-fetched worst case scenario thought about the next flight I have or my kids, and then I can reframe it. I can distract from it. I can talk about it with someone else. I can go for a walk in the arboretum near my home to shift my perspective. There are a number of things I could do to manage my response to that emotion. So we can't control the emotions that are automatically activated, but once they occur, that's our playground. That's what the front part of our brain is partially specialized to help us do.
This is good because this leads to something that I really wanted to ask you about. We've talked a little bit about family.
Yeah.
So, one of the highly academic sources of information that I use to learn about emotions is watching Miss Rachel with my 3-year-old grandson. And we learn that big feelings are okay. I'm not going to sing the song, but but big feelings are okay.
Yeah.
It's like, and so like, I think there's a lot of conventional wisdom that would say, well, maybe you should avoid those big feelings. Like it's too much. So let's just kind of tuck them away or forget about them, let it go, that kind of thing. But yet you actually challenge that idea that avoiding an idea is always a harmful thing. Like maybe it's okay to avoid sometimes.
Yeah. So we have a tendency in our culture to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay.
That is, we overgeneralize, and it directly relates to how we think about the process of avoidance. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of studies which demonstrate that chronically avoiding your problems is bad for you. So, in other words, if you have a decision, a coping tactic, anytime something bad happens, I'm just going to push it away. I'm not going to think about it, repress it, suppress it. If that's all you do, not good. Okay, that's an extreme response. What we have also learned, however, is you can be a little bit more tactical with your usage of avoidance. And in fact, if you're tactical with how you use it, it could be really valuable. So let me be concrete there. Um, Chris, have you ever experienced a moment where you received an email that, 6 words into reading the email, you find yourself becoming hot in the collar and angry?
Oh, oh, yeah, I don't even want to think about it. Yes, I have had those moments. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we all have, right?
right.
In that instance, did you respond right away? Or did you maybe take a couple hours off or maybe a day and then come back to it the next day? Or maybe you've done both versions in your life.
Well, I was going to say, when I was earlier in my career, I have had moments where I responded quickly. And I learned from that experience that maybe counting to 10, taking a breath, maybe even waiting until the next day is a much better way to manage the situation.
That's right. And I think most people would agree. And I certainly have had those too. And so here's why waiting, which by the way is a form of avoidance, works. We know that as time goes on, all emotions fade in their intensity.
Yeah.
So this is another truism that's been documented by science. When you take some time away from a problem, you come back to the problem, maybe it's gone. Sometimes the things that we think are a big deal, they're just gone the next hour or day. Sometimes they're still there, but they don't seem quite as big, right? And it's easier for us to manage them by shifting your attention away from the problem, giving time some opportunity to do what it does, which is to heal you. This can be very valuable.
Mhm.
Now, we want flexibility. That is really the key here. You want to be able to shift your attention away from a problem, come back to it later. You may find that, you know what, this problem is just so damn sticky in my mind, I can't distract from it. I'm thinking about it during the meeting. If that's happening to you, here's the really great news. There are like 15 or 20 other things you can do to manage your emotions, other kinds of tools that you can bring into the situation. This is another really important message that I try to reinforce in my book, Shift. Um, we have a tendency also to think in terms of one size fits all solutions. I'm often asked, Dr. Kross, what is your favorite tool? What's the one thing people should do right now? Times are stressful. I can't answer that question based on what I know of the science, because what I know is managing your emotions is, in some ways, it's a lot like being like a craftsman, a carpenter, a plumber.
Yeah. So I want to move from our internal shifters a little bit to external shifters because this gave me some really new things to think about. So I want to read a quote to you from your book that just really resonated with me. You wrote that the spaces we inhabit and move through shape our emotional lives. I'm going to read it one more time because I want to make sure people hear this. The spaces we inhabit and move through shape our emotional lives. Tell us about that. Tell us about how spaces and place impacts our emotions as an external shifter.
Well, I think of spaces as a tool for managing emotions that is hidden in plain sight. It's just waiting to be activated. And
Hmm.
some people really, really get it, but a lot of people don't. It's an underappreciated, underutilized tool. And it is really, without dramatizing, I think my wife would agree if she was here, um, it's changed the way I live my life, down to the routes I take when I walk to work, to how I decorated my home and worked on our landscaping, because I know that my surroundings can so powerfully impact how I feel. And this is why I think it is so vitally important for folks who are studying people's inner world, partner with individuals and organizations that are dealing with the external outer world to come together here. So, how do our spaces affect us? Well, it's through multi-directional. There are many different ways, and I'll just offer a few. Uh, are you familiar with the idea that when we're growing up, one of the ways that young children learn how to safely navigate the world is they attach to a secure figure in their life?
Okay. Yeah.
Familiar with the concept of attachment?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
kids ideally are positively and securely attached to their parents, their siblings, and the mere presence of those individuals provides a sense of safety and security.
Sure.
So everything's great when those people are around.
Right.
But what we've learned is that we also attach to places, to spaces, and we form these emotional attachments such that simply being in those contexts automatically provide us with a sense of safety and security that helps regulate us.
Sure.
So if you ever watch a spy movie, spies have these like safe apartments that they can go in a foreign city and there are resources for them. When I think about where I live in Ann Arbor, I've got multiple safe houses, right?
Okay.
I've got the Arboretum.
Uh-huh.
I've got one of my offices. I
Mm-hmm.
have the tea house that I've spent a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time writing books in. These are places, the moment I go there, I feel safe and secure. So that's one way that our spaces affect us.
Okay.
Another way they affect us is green spaces. Green spaces are really good for you.
Sure.
So green spaces provide you with an opportunity to restore when you feel really depleted. You can let your guard down and take in the beauty around you. They also give you the opportunity to experience the emotion of awe, which is an emotion we experience when we're in the presence of something vast and indescribable, something that just
Mm-hmm.
feels bigger than us. The last one I'll mention is when we're taken over by an emotion, we often don't feel like we're in the driver's seat. The emotion's taking hold. We don't like that because we also know that human beings all like to feel in control.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to know that the world is, predictable. We've learned that you can compensate for not feeling in control of yourself by creating order around you. Do you ever clean or organize when you're upset about something? Have you ever done that?
Sure. Absolutely. Like sometimes when I'm really upset, this sounds so weird, but like I mean I'll literally like clean the bathroom or something, which kind of weird, but
It,
yeah.
it makes total sense given what we know of how the mind works. So you're not feeling in control, but now, hey, guess what? Like, come to my house whenever you want. Like, it's a giant mess. Lots of things that I could very neatly put in order exactly as I want. I'm in control. And so creating order around you, what we've learned that does is it makes you feel more in control of your life. So it's this call this compensatory control. You're compensating for the lack of control you feel in your mind by exerting order and control around you. So that's another way your spaces can affect you.
There are a lot of workplaces that I've been in that they feel pretty uniform, like everything's the same, it's kind of monochromatic, it's et cetera. But like being able to have places that you can go to that are kind of your work version of a happy place,
Yeah.
right?
You could think about this at different levels, and I think it's useful to recognize just how much flexibility you have, how many options you have for intervening. I think like one thing
Mhm.
that I took away working on this book is, my God, like there are so many things you could do to manage your emotions. It's not just mindfulness and meditation. Like if that works for you, great. But there are 25 other things you could do. So when it comes to your spaces, one thing you could do is switch spaces outright, right? So if,
Mhm.
I'm in a funk at my home office, I'm going to go to the coffee shop, right? So I can
Mhm.
switch my spaces, and that's altering lots of things like the people around me, the sensory inputs. Sometimes you don't have that option though. So when you don't have that option, you can also make changes more locally to the space that you're in. You can design your space to impact the emotional experience you want to have. And like, hello, interior design, right? Like there's all, in part, I think a lot of really good interior design is thinking about spaces in terms of the impact they have emotionally on the individual, thinking about colors and light, sounds. These are sensory inputs. I have a whole chapter on this that really, really powerfully move our emotions around.
So you're tapping into a question that I love to ask guests on our show. I just have to ask it before we close out this
Yeah.
conversation, is understanding that you are not an interior designer, but you're hitting on a lot of things. So I'm not going to ask you to say, what's that one thing? But if you had advice for those of us who do think about space for a living, what are some of the things that you would share with us?
Well, I've given you a few. So I think for sure, think about greenery. There are arguments that we are evolutionarily inclined, the biophilia hypothesis, to enjoy looking and spending time with green spaces. That's one. Light, we know, can have powerful restorative effects. Sound. I mean, sound is so powerful. I think, if you can do it, have speakers built in throughout the home. Like this machine right here, this is an emotion regulation device for me. I have playlists.
Ethan's holding up his phone, everybody, so that's his emotion.
Yeah, sorry, I was holding up my phone. I mean, why do we listen to music? We listen to music because we like the way it makes us feel.
Yeah.
Have opportunities to like shower people in sounds. Sense. If you're designing a space, don't restrict yourself to just why is the term eluding me? It's probably eluding me because I've been traumatized from shopping for the drapes. Oh yeah, the drapes.
Yeah. Well, Ethan, over the course of the time that we've talked together, I will admit I had a little anxiety.
Oh no.
But I got over it because, well, first of all, you're a nice guy, but it's also just what you said before, the emotions, information, it's like, this is important. I care. I've had a lot of fun. This has been a great conversation. I'll even say I had a little spark of joy during our conversation. So
thanks for having me, Chris. It was a pleasure for me too.
Interested in the latest workplace research, insights, and design ideas? Follow Steelcase on LinkedIn to learn how the workplace can be a strategic asset for your organization to help improve engagement, productivity, and well-being. Connect with us and join the conversation today.
My conversation with Ethan reminded me that I'm in control of my emotions at work, even the big ones. If you enjoyed today's episode, would you share it with a friend or colleague? And don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And please visit us at steelcase.com/research to sign up for the Work Better Weekly newsletter for workplace research and design ideas delivered right to your inbox. Thanks again for being here, and we hope your day at work tomorrow is just a little bit better. Thank you to everyone who helps us work better, including our producers, Katie Pace, Rebecca Charbowski, Stav Kontas, Chiara Licari, and Brandon Lasik. We are thankful for the creative art direction by Aaron Ellison and Emily Cowdery, and for the editing and sound mixing by Soundpost Studios, and the technical support by Mark Caswell, Sean McManaman, and Jose Jimenez. Our digital publishing is by Areli Ariano and Jordan Marks.